It is humbling to be up here today. And while I often have to speak in front of people for my job, I'm not the sort of person who generally gives talks. I'm an incredibly average human, but I haven't lived a typical life. And I hope that by sharing some of my life with you today, I can also share a simple idea that is part of how I've become who I've become. When I was a little girl, I never thought I would be who I am today. Never thought I'd be married, never thought I'd be a parent, never thought I'd be the sort of person who puts on nice clothes and goes to a beautiful building to work every day. When I was a little girl, that's what I said. I said, when I was a little girl, the thing is that to tell you a story about my childhood, I have to make a lot of decisions. Do I give you all the context? Do I say, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I want to tell you a story about my childhood, and in order to understand that story, I have to tell you some things about me. You see, when I was a kid, I was a girl, and then I grew up and I became a lesbian and kind of a butch lesbian, and sometime around when I was 40, I decided I would be happier and healthier if I transitioned. So here I am. Or do I lie a little, lies of omission, and say, when I was a little kid, or do I lie a lot and say, when I was a little boy? Although sometimes the stories don't make sense then. Or do I just dive in, when I was a little girl, and let you figure it out? Humans are social animals. We want to get to know each other. And so sometimes even the simplest conversations can become minefields of self-revelation. How do I connect to you? How do I feel like I'm part of a community seen and safe when even starting a simple conversation is so loaded? I got married a couple of years ago. And if you had seen me the next day after that weekend that I got married, you would have, and you didn't really know me, and you said, how was your weekend? I would have said, it was great, I got married a couple of years ago. And you would probably say, congratulations, or why are you back at work so soon? Maybe you should be away somewhere. If you knew me a little bit, you probably would have said, I think that guy's been married for a long time. I wonder what happened. And you'd walk away shaking your head. Or I could tell the whole story. I got married a couple of years ago for the third time to the same amazing woman. I got married the first time in 1997 in front of family and friends and God, but not so much the IRS, because in 1997, I was a lesbian and gay marriage wasn't legal. I got married again a number of years later, early in the struggle for marriage equality, when Gavin Newsom, who was then the mayor of San Francisco, opened City Hall and deputized a whole bunch of people and married countless couples. We stood online 4 hours that day with my in-laws and my toddler kids, and in a line with the happiest hundreds of people who have ever stood 4 hours in line for anything. That marriage was vacated by the state soon after. Finally, on my 18th anniversary, I got married again. Again in front of my family and friends, in the backyard of a good friend of mine. Because even though I've got a beard and a tie, I'm still legally female. And marriage equality had finally passed, and we could finally marry legally. A lot of people have said to me over the years that I'm lucky, because unlike a lot of my trans peers, I pass. When you look at me, when most people look at me, they see kind of an average, middle-aged guy with thinning hair. And while that probably makes my life easier, I don't think that it's necessarily my good luck, because passing becomes hiding, and hiding erases my history. Not all trans folks think that way. We don't all have the same story, and we don't all have the story that maybe you know. I never felt like a man trapped in a woman's body. I just didn't really understand how gender, boyness or girlness, really applied to me. I don't think it's an either-or question. I'm not sure that I feel any more like a man today than I felt like a woman then. And it's a struggle in my whole life To be able to say that on any day, throughout all of the things that I've been, that I can feel proud of those things and that I can feel and honor myself. That little girl, the butch lesbian, the person that my kids used to call mama, 40-year-old woman, a 50-year-old man. And on my best days, I feel like I was exactly the right person every place along the way. And on my worst days, I question and I wonder and I regret part of every decision that I ever made. My story, my coming-of-age story, is one of a process of self-revelation, of learning of my identity, just like every one of you. My story sets me apart. I didn't live a typical life, but I'm pretty sure that none of you have either. When people ask me to tell my story, I usually start with the places that I'm different. I've come to think that maybe that's not the best idea. Not because I want to hide, but because I want to connect. The places, the things that we have in common are the things that bring us together. And together, we thrive. I read the other day somewhere that the primary indicator for longevity for people is social connection. The data even says that together we thrive. But there's a quirk of human nature that subverts our ability to be our best selves, to live our best lives. When we meet people and we try and find common ground, sometimes we find difference. And when we find that difference, difference is all we can see. And difference makes us afraid. It's probably a survival instinct of some kind, and that instinct, the cost of that instinct is fear, and the cost of that instinct is hatred, and the cost of that instinct is violence. Violence against trans people and gender nonconforming people has increased every year. Between 2014 and 2015, the rates of murder among trans people, particularly trans women of color, doubled, and it's increased every year since then. It's mothers and sisters murdered, sons and brothers beaten, people who love to cook, people who drive to work, people who are trying to save just enough money maybe to be able to retire someday, just like me, just like you. What brings us together are the things that we have in common. I don't think of myself as an activist, but I feel like I lived something of an activist life, and what that means is that while I've been to my share of marches and I've been to my share of meetings and actions, the most important thing that I've done to do good work in this world is to live authentically, never hiding. A long time ago, before I transitioned, I used to have a job as a speech therapist. And one of the things I did in that role, because I supervised a lot of different nursing homes, was to do trainings. Trainings of really boring stuff like Medicare regulations. And I traveled around the country doing those trainings. I was sent one time to Arkansas to do that training, just outside of Little Rock. And I went and I did my training, and I met my peers, and things went really well, and we went out to dinner. And we had drinks, and I met with the director of the program, and then I came back to my home in California, and I met with my supervisor, who said, I heard amazing things about your trainings in Arkansas. But the director of the program reached out to me, and she said, if she wants to come back to Arkansas, she probably better carry a purse. It's not always easy to live your authentic life. It's not always safe to be out, to be queer, to be a father who was once a mother, a man who was never a boy, human and common, formed in the image of the divine, just like all of you. Sometimes when I talk about myself, I start by talking about the ways that I'm different. I start from difference because I think that's what makes me interesting. But I've actually come to believe that that's probably really not right. That I should start from common ground, from where we're the same, because knowing where we're the same is the thing that brings us together. Sometimes I I think that we spend a lot of time just talking about who we are and why, and we forget that we can all come together, that we have power when we're together. And in order to do that, I kind of have a little practice that I do. And practice is kind of a phrase that I hate, so I'm going to say it a different way. There's a thing that I do that helps remind me how to be in the moment, how to be together, and how to be human. What I do is, when I meet people, I try to assume that we're all exactly alike, that we're human, that we're completely human, and that we're interesting. And I think to myself, what is it that I would want somebody to know about me? What questions would I ask? And so I ponder that and I say, what are you proud of? And then I think, what did you have for lunch today? And did you pack it yourself or did you buy it when you got to work? Who loves you? And what would they say to me if I asked them why? I don't think that doing this thing will change government policy. But I know we need to do that. I don't think doing this thing will end violence. But what I do think is that it could help me feel like you think that I count, and that you can count on me, and that I can count on you. And if we can do that, we can be strong enough to make that change. Thank you.